Once again, you're welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be looking at Tinubu's disqualification and judgment Supreme Court will need to overturn in order to save Tinubu, which is an impossible task. As the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal progresses and resumes today, Nigerians are already looking forward to how the judges will decide, not just at the tribunal level, but also at the Supreme Court level. Confidence is very, very low, and one can't blame people for feeling this way because, based on recent rulings of the Supreme Court, having overturned events using logic and the law upside down, so it's understandable that people lose confidence. Many people might be saying that all judges are the same. They have collected money, they have taken bribes, and believing that nothing will come out of it, that no one can remove a sitting president. These are just some of the many permutations and issues being discussed. However, when one looks at the gravity of what Tinubu has done and all the baggage that comes with him, along with the massive evidence presented in court, the judges at the Supreme Court will need to go to extreme levels in order to free Tinubu. There have become There have been many judicial precedents that the Supreme Court justices have been part of in the past few years. While the Supreme Court has the right to revisit a case or revise their decisions if they have new information, the question is, how many times will they do this in order to free Tinubu? If it's just one judgment that they need to revise, people might think it's just a one-off and public opinion might not be against them. However, when you consider that they would need to revise multiple judgments, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7, in order to free Tinubu, it becomes a matter of morality rather than just taking bribes or favoring someone. And it does not stop there. What about the implications of the judgment if they eventually overturn all past judgments in order to favor him? What would that mean for Nigeria going forward in terms of politics and governance? It would undoubtedly change the political landscape in Nigeria. For example, the Supreme Court judgment that made Ahmed Lawan, who didn't contest for the senatorial primaries, to become the winner of the election. Before this judgment, it was possible for someone who didn't contest the elections properly but won the primary election at the party level to become the winner of the election. That was how Wike became the governor of Rivers State. He won the PDP governorship primaries, but somehow INEC put Celestine Omehe's name on the ballot for the general election, and the Supreme Court restored him. Many people held the Supreme Court for delivering justice in that case. However, why didn't many people hail the Supreme Court when they delivered judgment on Lawan's case and that of Akpabio? It shows that something was definitely wrong with those judgments. Now let's look at the first judgment that the Supreme Court justices would need to overturn in order to free Tinubu. In 2003, Buhari lost the presidential election to Obasanjo and went to the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Eventually, the Supreme Court ruled that despite Obasanjo not winning Abuja, what was needed was for the candidate to score at least 25% of the total votes cast in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. It was the first judicial interpretation of the 25% requirement in Abuja since the Fourth Republic began. The Supreme Court interpreted it as a presidential candidate needing to score 25% in two-thirds of the states in Nigeria must still score 25% in Abuja. This was the interpretation. The next judicial precedent that the Supreme Court justices would need to overturn was set back in 2008 in the case of Buhari versus Yaradua. Buhari sought the cancellation of the presidential election petition because Yaradua didn't win Abuja. However, the Supreme Court justices that sat on the panel disagreed with him. They followed the earlier precedent of 2003 and ruled in the same manner that 25% was only required in Abuja, not a win. Therefore, they struck off Buhari's petition. So based on the 25% requirement, the Supreme Court has already made two judgments stating that a presidential candidate must win 25% in Abuja before being declared the winner. And Tinubu obviously did not achieve this required percentage in the FCT. And since this section of the constitution was not amended before the presidential election, it becomes a dead end for Tinubu. He cannot escape it. The Supreme Court has no option but to follow precedent by annulling his victory. Regardless of how people feel about the 25% requirement in Abuja, it is still the law, and the law must be upheld. It is practically impossible for someone to have 25% in all 36 states of the Federation without having it in Abuja. Abuja represents all Nigerians, so if you are already popular in some states in Nigeria, it means you are popular in Abuja as well. All past presidents, including MKO Abiola, scored the required 25% in Abuja. Therefore, the case of Tinubu won't be different. The third judgment that they will need to overturn was delivered in 2014, and as fate will have it, the current Chief Justice of Nigeria was part of the panel of judges that delivered that judgment in the groundbreaking case of Abacha versus the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Supreme Court ruled that if forfeiture is a result of a crime, there can be no forfeiture if there is no crime. If someone forfeits something, that means a crime was committed. Therefore, this judgment, the judicial precedent will ensure that Tinubu is disqualified. Tinubu forfeited 460,000 US dollars to the United States government, funds that were traced to narcotics trafficking. So the hands of the Supreme Court judges, including the Chief Justice, are tied. They cannot do otherwise but to disqualify Tinubu. The fourth judgment that they will need to overturn in order to save Tinubu is the one they delivered in 2017. Two Supreme Court justices who delivered that judgment are still serving at the Supreme Court. In the unanimous judgment, they disqualified the PDP candidate because he forged his certificate. Looking at the evidence that articles witnesses submitted at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, you will see that the Supreme Court justices have no option but to take a clue from the earlier judicial precedents they themselves set in 2017. Or will they treat Tinubu differently? The next case that ties the hands of the Supreme Court justices is the one they delivered in 2020. That judgment disqualified Diri and David Leon because his deputy forged a certificate. The significant takeaway from that judgment is that the Supreme Court understood that time was of the essence. They disqualified him 24 hours before he was supposed to take the oath of office. They understood that politicians who didn't win elections or violated some laws in the process shouldn't be allowed to enjoy the office even for a day. So it can be done even without amending relevant sections of the law. Election disputes can be resolved before swearing in, so only people who truly got the mandate of people will be sworn into office. The next one is the one they delivered this year, Oyetola versus Adeleke. In that judgment, the Supreme Court upheld and reinforced all the guidelines and processes involved in the conduct of elections. All these processes and guidelines were not obeyed by INEC during the election. They conducted the election without recourse to the guidelines. These are some of the sufferings that the judiciary have found themselves, and no amount of bribery or intimidation will win this case for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I will bring to you proceedings. Today, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal resumes. I will bring you total proceedings of what happens in the court. So if you want to stay updated with that information, make sure to hit the red subscribe button and stay close to this channel. Every day, I will bring to you updates of the judicial proceedings. Thanks for watching.